Last night, as Americans learned that the United States had carried out an operation that resulted in the capture and death of Osama bin Laden, I think we experienced the same sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. We were reminded again that there is a pride in what this nation stands for and what we can achieve that runs far deeper than party, far deeper than politics. And so tonight it is my fervent hope that we can harness some of that unity and some of that pride to confront the many challenges that we still face.
President Obama speaking to a bipartisan congressional gathering last night, getting a big bipartisan standing ovation and calling for unity, for an effort even in Congress to supersede our divisions, to work together. He talks about that all the time. Even in the middle of intense political fighting, he insists on his trademark "let's all come together" message, to an extent that sometimes, admittedly, has made liberals like me a little crazy. But in times like this one, the president here announcing the death of Osama bin Laden at American hands, President Obama's talk about unity does reflect a real, palpable feeling in a lot of the country, as well as just the emotional power of this event, of how much it means to all of us that Osama bin Laden is finally gone. Is this a powerful enough moment for us as a country that it could start to bridge another gap that we've got that isn't about politics? On 9/11, there was a nation mourning and a nation in shock. But there was a subset of us as a country who were families and loved ones of the individuals who were killed that day. Since 9/11, our nation has been at war for the whole decade, but it has been a tiny proportion of us who have fought those wars and whose families and loved ones have seen their families and loved ones fight those wars. In this moment of emotional catharsis we are all now having about Osama bin Laden's death and about 9/11, 10 years on, is there a way for the nation as a whole to close the gap, to do right by the comparatively small number of Americans who have borne such a disproportionate share of the burden in these last 10 years? Joining us now for the interview is Alice Hoagland. Her son was one of the first to sacrifice. Mark Bingham was one of the passengers on board United Airlines Flight 93 who fought back against the hijackers, which is what's believed to have forced that plane to crash into a field in Pennsylvania instead of into its likely target in Washington, D.C. Alice Hoagland, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a real pleasure to hear you articulate the issues so well.
Well, thank you. Well, can I just start by just asking how you felt and what you've been thinking about since you learned that bin Laden had been killed?
Well, it started out with cautious hope, and it turned to real optimism, and I was very gratified to hear the bipartisan members of Congress cheer and applaud, because to tell you the truth, I am very glad that Osama bin Laden is dead and not in the world anymore. I think the world is well rid of him, and I am so grateful to our past presidents, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, who began this ardent effort to capture Osama bin Laden, and I am thrilled to death that President Obama has been able to accomplish that, and I'm so grateful to him, and I am very grateful to Leon Panetta, who had the courage to gather the intelligence and be willing to take a bullet for this operation if it failed, but was fortunately spared that because his Navy SEALs, those courageous men, were able to execute a mission so well, such a good surgical strike.
Did you know that it would be important to you for bin Laden to be captured or killed before it finally happened? Is it something that you thought about before it happened?
Well, Rachel, you've hit on it. I did not allow myself to think about it. I realized that the capture or death of Osama bin Laden had been downplayed, probably in the fear that it wouldn't happen. But now that it has happened, I have to admit that I'm very relieved. I'm very relieved. It seems like such good counterpoint to the brutal and unfocused and miserable mass murder that Osama bin Laden inflicted upon Americans. To have him surgically removed, excised by American bullets, it seems very just and good. And President Obama is right. We have every reason to take the moral high ground on this and to be glad that we can now look to this death as a way to to renew our life and our goodness and our search for reconciliation with our Muslim brothers.
9/11 has changed our history so much as a country.
Yeah,
do you think that there are ways that we could do better by the people who were most directly affected? Veterans and military families who have fought since 9/11, but also 9/11 family members like you. Are there things we could be doing that we're not doing?
Well, my heart goes out to the members of the military who have fought and died and fought and come home maimed and handicapped. I know that the Veterans Administration, the Department of Veterans Affairs, is really beefing up its work to help those who are now home with us and recuperating. There is really no just compensation for family members who have lost loved ones, and there certainly is no real way of compensating for giving your life for your country. So I am satisfied with what our government has done, and I think that they have shouldered responsibility, financial responsibility in the form of the Victims' Compensation Fund that they probably should not have shouldered. I think that other groups, the airlines that were involved, should take responsibility for the deficiencies in aviation security that they have perpetrated. So I am satisfied with the behavior and actions of the United States government. At the same time, I'm very sensitive to the loss that many of us have suffered.
Alice Hoagland, mother of United Flight 93 hero Mark Bingham, thank you for talking to us at a time like this. I'm sure it's still a very emotional thing at this time in particular. So thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Rachel.